Okay, are we looking at the best EDC knife ever made? So throw cost out the window. Let's not even talk about cost. Let's talk about the knife. And there's been some controversy around this knife. This knife was 2010, I think, Knife of the Year. It won some big award. It was designed by Grant and Gavin and produced by Chris Reeve. And of course, Chris Reeve is known for the quality of his knives, the tolerances of all the milling and the quality of the construction and the materials and the knives. Very limited production. I wrote to Chris Reeves trying to get production numbers on this knife, and I couldn't get any, but I would say, you know, maybe 100 a year for this model would be a good guess. Very limited production, but it is a production knife. It's not a custom knife. It is a production knife. But a lot of people would say it doesn't get any better than this. And a couple of really unique things about this knife. This is called a TiLock. And it's kind of a departure from Chris Reeve's earlier designs. The Sebenza 21, the small Sebenza. This is kind of a little bit bigger than a small Sebenza, and I'll get into that a little bit here in my comments. And this really isn't a detailed review of the knife. This is just my impressions of the knife. There are a lot of great reviews on YouTube that you might want to also check out. But some things that I've noticed in playing with the knife for a day or so now, and I intend to keep playing around with it, and I'll put new comments in here if I discover anything new about the knife. But the knife is very light. It's only 3 ounces. And for a knife with a blade this size, a little over 3 inches, that is impressive. It is, in my opinion, very solid, very well made. Chris Reeve himself, I think, says this is not a hard use knife. I would call it a gentleman's EDC knife, but at the same time, if you have to put it into some hard use, I think you could. I think it's very strong. Some people have said that they think that this locking mechanism, this titanium lock bar here, and I'll show you in a moment how that works, that it may not be the strongest lock system out there, but for a knife of this size, I think it's very adequate. And if you were bearing down and doing some work, you're actually pushing the lock mechanism in, so it would be very hard for that to pop out. And I'm sorry, but this titanium bar here is not going to break. I mean, titanium is very strong, so whatever you're using this knife blade for, you're only going to be able to get so much leverage pushing on it anyway. I think this is more than adequate for uses for this knife. I really like the way it feels in the hand, exceptionally comfortable in the hand. I have a large Sebenza, and I will tell you right now, this is more comfortable, more ergonomic than that knife. Especially, the big advantage to this knife and to this locking system is both sides are identical. You can see here, except for the clip, which that is removable, which I may actually end up removing that. I haven't decided yet. The other thing I might do to that is I might high polish it, because I really like the look, the stonewash of this titanium, but I don't like the look of the clip. And we'll talk about the clip in a moment. But the fact that these slabs are identical on both sides, and there's no titanium lock bar to interrupt the flow and the design, also makes for a great grip. And the shape of the handle makes for a great grip. And the fact that you can choke up right here, there's like a choil up front here, so you can choke up for close work. That gives us even more flexibility with this knife for EDC tasks. And of course you can grip it back here too if you need more reach. Very comfortable in the hand. Again, very lightweight. You can see how all the little details on this knife, the more you study it, the more you can tell that a lot went into this design. But you can see how the lanyard has a little notch here to sit in that kind of makes an extension of the knife. And then when it's in your pocket, it goes this direction, so it's out of the way if you got it clipped in your pocket. So really, really thoughtful design, very functional design. I think this could be the best EDC knife out there. Now, just to throw in another comparison here, let's see what I've got handy. I've got a Spyderco Delica 4, full flat ground, and the thing about this comparison that's interesting is you can see that the handle on the Spyderco is actually longer than the handle on the Chris Reeves knife. And even so, the cutting edge on the Chris Reeves knife is much longer. The blade is longer. Any way you look at it, the blade is longer. Even if you count the full choil here, the blade is still longer on the Chris Reeve knife. So what we've got here is we have a very compact knife for the length of the blade. And by the way, I release it like this. Oh, it's not focusing in. Okay, so I release it like that and then turn around and close it. There are other ways to do it, but that's the easiest way I've found. And for deploying it, you can kind of flick it. See if I can do it reaching around the camera. Of course, I fail on camera. Let's see if I can do that. It's hard here. Okay, so you just kind of flick it like that. And when you're not reaching around the camera, it's easier to do. And so there's several ways you can open it as well. And again, there are a lot of videos on that talk about all that. It's a knife that once you get used to it, it's very easy to handle. I'll put it that way. And you can deploy it rapidly, several different ways. But getting back to the size and the weight, it's a little bit heavier than this. This is one of the lightest EDCs you can get. But in the hand, this feels very good. And for the additional blade length that you get, I think it's a big plus. That folded, it's actually a smaller knife than this. Let me fold them both. You can see, of course, the angle of the camera changes it a little bit to the perspective, but I put them this way. Okay, so there's a little bit better perspective where you can see the size. You can see that the Spyderco is just a little bit longer, just a little bit. Of course, not counting the lanyard. Of course, that's removable. And it's definitely wider this way because the way the blade sticks up. So I would, and they're about the same width. And so I would say, all in all, the Chris Reeve is more compact, which for EDC, and this is what I would call a small to medium size EDC. Chris Reeves is a lot of knife for the size. In other words, there's a lot of blade in there for the size of the knife, and that's something that you also have with a Sebenza, with a large Sebenza, is the way the handle's designed and so forth. You've got a very compact handle for the size of the blade that you have, and they've continued that tradition, maybe even more so with this knife. So, and like other Chris Reeve knives, I believe that this knife could last you a lifetime and hand it down to your next of kin and carry on. I believe that this titanium lock bar system and the rollers and the way this is all designed, it's going to hold up fine. I don't even mind flicking it like that. It just locks right into place very nicely. I don't see any problems at all with this design. It's got the bearings on either side of the blade, sort of like a zero tolerance 0560 has. Those should hold up fine. Again, you're not going to be slopping out in the mud with this and really thumping on it, I don't think. I would call this a gentleman's folder. You know, when you're dressed up going out to dinner or whatever, want to carry something nice. Of course, you could carry this all the time, and I probably will carry this most of the time as my lightweight EDC, just because it really is a great little knife, and it could be the best. Now, the few things that I would change on this knife. I like the stonewash finish. I don't like this contrasting clip. This has more like the finish that Be Blessed or whatever they call it that you get on a regular large Sebenza, standard Sebenza. I don't know why they didn't stonewash this as well, why they wanted that contrast like that. I may even have this, take this off and have this high polished, because again, we're talking about a gentleman's folder here. But it's not the end of the world. It looks good, okay, with this clip. I really like the clip, because one problem I have with using clips, and if you've seen some of my other videos, I use a lot of sheaths to carry some of my larger knives, is they put so much pressure on your pant pocket that, you know, when you pull them in and out, they end up fraying your pocket. With this, you can push down and you can release the pressure and slide it right out, no problem. Yet when you release it, when it's in your pocket, it's under enough pressure, it ain't coming out of there. Trust me, it's not coming out accidentally. So it's a really much better than most clip designs that just rely on constant friction there that you can't really release when you pull it out, because you're going to fray those pants you know, over time. I don't care how smooth the clip is. So that's a great design. Again, the finish is something that I would probably change on it. I'm trying to think what else I would change. Damn, it's so good. It's such a good little knife. I probably, these rollers here, I probably wouldn't have them gold color. They're like a brass, combination brass aluminum, I think, alloy or something. I would probably just have had those be polished titanium. You've got enough coolness with the blue titanium bar, enough color and all. I don't know that we really needed that touch of brass or gold, but that's a personal preference. It does look good for people that like that sort of thing. But that's just nitpicking. Yeah, it is a fantastic knife. I really want to hear your comments on it. One thing is closing it, and again, I'm not real practiced with this. Closing it one-handed, again, the way I do it is I flip it upside down here and I push like this, release the blade, and then, you know, very carefully with two hands, and then I close it. And that seems to be the easiest way for me to close it one-handed without, you know, scarring up my finger. And when you flick it open, you have to kind of flick this and do some wrist action at the same time. And again, I'll see if I can do it on camera here. Yeah, there we go. And because you have to give it a little bit of wrist action when you do that in order to get past the detent. Somehow there's a halfway detent about right there where the blade wants to stop. So if you go to flick it out, and I'll do it here without enough pressure, see, it'll stop right there. And then, of course, you can just push it right here on the blade and go the rest of the way. So it's not the end of the world. And the other thing that you can do is you can push right here. And oh, this is another thing that I would suggest on if I were designing the knife, is there's a very slight little cutout here in the blade for your finger for you to push on. Very slight. I would make that more so. I would make more of a cut down here in the blade. It wouldn't hurt the strength of the blade. It would still be plenty strong. And that way it would give you more for you to push your thumb into here. I can get it with my thumb and I can push it out, but there's not much purchase there to get if I want to push it out that way. And again, you can push on this as well, but it would be nice to have a little more in there, especially if I had a glove on or something like that, to get a little more purchase on. But again, that I can still do it without it. And once it's to this point, you can just push right here on the blade and push it the rest of the way. Oh, you do have to watch. You could pinch yourself here if you get your finger in the way of these rollers. So it's something that you have to get used to. And again, it's not a big deal. Once you play with it some, you get used to that. But that's another little thing. I would probably have a little more of a cut down here in the blade to give me a little place to get some purchase. Now, the other way you can do it, and again, there's a whole bunch of ways to open and close this knife, is you can pinch it on either side with your thumb and your forefinger and just open it like that. And then what I do is I slightly reposition and then go the rest of the way, just so there's no way my finger's anywhere near those rollers. But again, you play around with it, it gets second nature like any of these knives, and you can open and close it fine. There is a gentleman on YouTube that can pop it with his finger hard enough to get it to close all the way, almost like an auto knife. I haven't been able to master that yet. Again, I've only been playing with it for about a day or so. So if I go here and I pop it loose, for me, I can't get it to go all the way closed. And that's a little bit hard on my finger when I do that with one finger right now, because again, I'm reaching around the camera and I'm not real practiced with it. But it's hard to find things really wrong with this knife. And watch my 10 best EDC knives, my 10 best, I think it's 10 best knives video. A lot of them are EDC knives. And take a look at the other knives that I've talked about, the Sage 2 and some other great EDC knives. This really is the top of the heap. And I said I wasn't going to talk about price. Well, yeah, this is $475. Knife Art, knifeart.com. Check them out. They have them. At least as of now, they have them in stock. It really is a piece of knife art. It really is a beautiful piece of work, beautiful piece of kit that you can use for years and years and years. It's great steel in it. Again, you can get all the specs on some of those other videos and on the Chris Reeve's website. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. I'd like to hear your comments. This has gotten like mixed reviews in some of the forums. Some people like it, some people hate it. I think it's fantastic. I think ergonomically it feels great in the hand. Any way you slice it, whether it's closed or open, it feels great in the hand, just like a lot of Chris Reeve's knives. But because of the shape of this, it's even more comfortable than a large Sebenza. I don't have a small Sebenza, but I'm sure this would be more comfortable than a small Sebenza as well, because of the shape, because of the ergonomics of this knife. It just fits in the hand beautifully, beautifully. And you can choke up here and do some real detailed stuff. The tip is strong enough on the knife, so I can get that to focus in. For most EDC tasks, it's not going to be as fragile as, for example, this tip is very, very thin at the tip, the Spyderco. This one is beefier. I think it's just a great all-around small EDC, not small, but small to medium-size EDC knife. And just the quality is off the charts. The fit and finish, see how that centered that blade is? I hope you can see that. Another fantastic knife by Chris Reeve. You gotta love him and what he does there in Idaho. My hat's off to anyone that can maintain the kind of quality that he does year after year and produce these beautiful, really works of art that are very practical knives to use every day. Thanks for watching.